Tom Nichols with Meet the Candidate. My guest is Colonel Conrad Reynolds, who's running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. Colonel, welcome to KVRE.
Well, thanks a lot, Tom. I love coming down to the village.
We have a lot of ground to cover. Let's start with asking you why you're running for the office.
I'm running because Congress is broken. I mean, Congress is broken. The rhinos and the Republican Party, the Republican in name only, they are destroying us, and it's time to start replacing those people. And French Hill is my opponent, and I want to replace French Hill. He's been there 8 years, and I will talk about in just a minute why I think he needs to go.
You object to some of his votes, don't you?
Of course I do. I mean, he voted for red flag laws against veterans in the National Defense Authorization Act. He didn't secure the border. We had, in 2017 and 18, Tom, we had the House, we had the Senate, and we had a Republican president, President Trump, that was willing to secure the border. But guess what? The Republicans could not get the funding for that. And that is every illegal that crosses that border today is because of the inaction of the rhinos that were in Congress at the time. And that's one of the reasons. There are many others. My opponent, Mr. Hill, voted for the January 6th Commission. He was one of 35 Republicans that voted for that. I can't find a person in my district who thinks that's a smart idea. They did not want him to do that, but he did. He turned his back on us. He said the election wasn't stolen, which is ridiculous. I mean, we all know that it was. He says
a lot of things are coming out now about that.
Oh, actually, and when we get time, I've got more to talk about that because I have an election integrity town hall on the 29th of April, and I'm bringing the Secretary of State, Mark Fincham, to talk about exactly, he's running for Secretary of State, to show exactly what's going on, what went on in Arizona. I'm also bringing an attorney that works in Wisconsin on the fraud, to bring him in and explain it. Oh, it was stolen. There's no question. But Mr. Hill said it wasn't stolen, and he also blamed Trump for the January 6th riot. And he said it was Trump's hot rhetoric and that led up to it, and that's ridiculous. And I think it's time for Mr. Hill to be replaced.
Well, the president called up the National Guard, but he could not activate them. That fell to the Speaker of the House and the Mayor of Washington, D.C. that refused to do it.
Well, here's the deal. Who briefed the president on the fact that they knew there was going to be some type of riot?
Yeah.
They knew it. The feds knew it. The FBI knew it. But they didn't brief President Trump. Why? These are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking in the next Congress starting in January. We need to do an investigation to find out exactly who dropped the ball and why. And those people ought to be held accountable. And I intend to do that when I go to Congress in January. Let me tell you a couple other things that Mr. Hill voted for. I'm not for vaccine mandates at all by the federal government. He voted for the National Vaccine Tracking Database on the 30th of April. It's called HR 550. And in that, it has real-time reporting, which means that it ties all of your city, county, state, and federal database so that they know in real time when you got your vaccine or a booster, and they remind you. This is not right. This is not right at all.
Big brother.
And it was a $400 million bill that they got through in the House, and they did it under suspension of rules. And most people don't understand this. A suspension of rules are only used like for renaming a post office or something that costs a couple $1,000. It's not a big deal. But this was almost a $500 million bill. And what they did, they suspended all the rules, no debate. So they could just slide it through. And French Hill voted for that. He was one of 80 Republicans who voted for that. And there are many other Republicans, 110 or so, who didn't. People need to ask yourself, why? Why would he do that? And on one hand, he said, hey, this is not a tracking database, but all the people that voted against it, his colleagues said it was. So he's out of step with the people in Central Arkansas, and I think it's time for him to go. He's been there 8 years. He's never signed a term limits pledge. I have. I think we need to have term limits. We need a balanced budget. You know, when he got into office, we were $16 trillion in debt. You know what we are now? 30 trillion, over 30 trillion. He said that was the biggest threat facing America in 2014, and he did nothing about it.
And you plan to join the Freedom Caucus, don't you?
The Freedom Caucus is probably it's the most conservative group of legislators in the House. There's 40 of them, and it wavers what goes back.
None from Arkansas.
Absolutely none from Arkansas. How is that possible? How is that possible? I will be the first. You've got to be invited in. I talked to Scott Perry, who's the leader of that. Andy Biggs was before. In fact, that organization was started by none other than Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows in 2015. And they saw that the Republican Party was going too far left, and they said, we've got to have a caucus to keep them a little bit more on the conservative side. But not one person from Arkansas, I will be the first one. So if you want a conservative congressman, it's going to be Conrad Reynolds for Congress. And I'm asking you to go vote on May 24th. I need your vote. I need you to tell your friends about me because I don't have $1 million, from the people. I don't, from the people in Little Rock. I'm not going to be. First off, I don't get any special interest money. It's just me, and it's a ground roots. Grassroots type organization, and I'm asking people to help me do that.
Your website before we run out
My
of time.
website is electconrad.com, electconrad.com, and there's a phone number, and you can reach out and call me anytime, and I'll answer any question you have.
You've been listening to Meet the Candidate. Our guest, Conrad Reynolds, candidate for Congress in the 2nd District. Thanks for coming in, Colonel.
Thank you.